let's talk about the second step, which is giving yourself multiple paths to explore and freedom to experiment. This is my favorite step in the process. Many of us love a routine, but the truth is we got to put some variety in there. We need to have different actions that can still lead us to the same place. And this can be really tricky to think about if you have a resolution that seems pretty straightforward. So, for example, if your resolution is to finish your book this year, you may think that there's only one way to do that, which is to sit down and write the book. But can you challenge yourself to attend a new prickle once a month, one that you don't normally attend? Or can you choose different places to write or give yourself different rewards for meeting certain milestones? We are creative people. And so this is where we get to be creative. And as thinking about variety, I want you to think about something else. I might have made this up, but I don't think so. I call it low high actions. There's probably like a legitimate term for this. I don't know what that is. But these are actions, I call them low high because they have a low barrier to entry, but a high level of satisfaction. And for me, these are proof that resolutions don't have to be hard. So these are the things that you can do with minimal or no change to your schedule, pretty low effort, but still have a high payout. These are highly motivating because success begets success. The more of these that you can kind of like work in with some of the more challenging steps in the process, the more satisfaction you'll feel, the more self-efficacy, and so on and so forth. So, for example, in 2017, my resolution was to be someone who is joyful. And so I decided that I wanted to track the actions that I actually took to cultivate more joy in my life. And that meant keeping a journal. And to make it as easy as possible, I kept my journal and pen on my nightstand. And every night, I wrote down what I did that day to create joy. Nothing more, nothing less. Sometimes I would have 7 or 8 different days on a single page because full sentences were optional. Good handwriting optional too, as you can see here in these pictures. But I didn't have to go out of my way to find a pen, go track down my journal. I could do it while I was already under the covers. And it was just easy, took about 30 seconds. But what I learned was that creating that list of joyful actions was in itself a source of joy. So it produced a high level of satisfaction as well as being really easy to work into my life. This year, I have another example of a low high. This year, I am trying to be someone who is not addicted to dopamine. My phone is my drug dealer of choice at the moment, but I have learned that when my phone is in another room, I am actually too lazy to go get it. So, low barrier to entry, just leave it out of sight on the other side of the house. High satisfaction. I am reinforcing that I can be without it, and I'm letting my laziness work in my favor for once. And in terms of writing, I know some hedgies who are already doing this in their writing life. So committing to writing 300 words a day, for example, very low barrier to entry. That is less than a page, but highly satisfying when you see how quickly that number adds up. There's lots of different ways that you can insert these kinds of things into your resolution. One other suggestion that I have is habit stacking. Some of you might already be familiar with this. I learned about habit stacking through James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. But the idea here is that you add the habit you want to cultivate to a habit you've already established. So my joy journal is also an example of habit stacking because it was a habit that I just tacked on to my other bedtime routines. But this can also work on a more macro level. So, for example, you could challenge yourself to establish a new habit or routine in January, say drinking more water. And then in February, you can keep drinking your water and add going to bed at 9:30. And then in March, you keep drinking your water, keep going to bed at 9:30, and you add some morning stretches. That's the approach that I took in 2022, the year that I needed to heal from grief. I knew I couldn't do it all at once. I did not have the capacity in January to do all the things that I knew that I needed to do. So in January, I just focused on my house. Can I do my dishes? Can I do my laundry? Can I keep my living room picked up? Then in February, I started meal planning again, menu planning, trying to take more of an interest in my meals while keeping up with those chores. And then in March, I added doing some kind of creative practice a few times a week. and so on and so forth. Because I knew in January, I did not have it in me to just do all the things. And so if you've got like a really big, audacious resolution in mind, what can you start in January and that you build on in February and just kind of let that snowball effect really get some momentum going? With all of these things, with whatever you try, it is important to remember that you are the boss of your resolution. You get to change what isn't working. Experiment. It will not take long to figure out that something didn't work the way that you thought it might, and that's okay. That does not mean that you failed. It does not mean your resolution isn't worth pursuing. It just means that you need to try something else. That's it. So, I have another example from my joyful year. I decided I was going to start running again, which I had really enjoyed doing several years prior. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna run again. That'll give me joy. And it did until one of my colleagues started going to the gym at the same time and decided that we needed to work out together, which would have been fine. But she wanted to spend all of that time talking about other colleagues or talking about curriculum or other just work things that I didn't want to talk about. I just wanted to run and watch HGTV on the gym TVs and just live my life. And so running kind of stopped being a source of joy for me for a little while because there was this added element that I wasn't anticipating. But I had already kind of given myself some variety. I had made a list of other things to do. And so my resolution didn't all hang on that one thing that kind of started to be a source of annoyance instead.